The other way I've heard this described that I started to think about it was as a tail hedge, which is like a thing that you buy in your portfolio that is inversely correlated, extremely inversely correlated to the main part of your portfolio. So if you have tons of stocks and then, you're going to retire soon, and you're worried that we're at a top and that the market's going to crash, well, then you may want to spend money that will just be a waste of money if the market doesn't crash, then it's a lottery ticket basically. But if it does, then, I think I saw recently that clients of Nassim Taleb's research company or whatever bought this hedge, this option strategy he recommended, and they were up 4,000% on Black Thursday because of this one hedge they bought.
That's what Ackman did, the hedge fund guy. Like he bought some insurance hedge and, the market dove and he made billions of dollars. I mean, yeah, smart people find ways to make money regardless of the market. And you look like a genius when that hedge works, of course. And it's forgettable when it doesn't. Like, I mean, I comment on this all the time. I'm just not naturally a shorter. Like, I don't like to bet against markets. I'm a eternal optimist. I'm a positive person. It makes me feel bad, like to some degree. Like if I'm shorting and the market's going down, that means there's real pain around and I'm profiting from it in some way. I only short, and because I only have 15% of my money for trading, I only short as a hedge against my investments, right? And it's kind of what you're talking about. So if I'm short Bitcoin, I'm short with, 10% of my portfolio. I want my short to get destroyed. I'll go on Twitter and I'll be like, well, I'm shorting now. By the way, I've only shorted like 3 times in the last few years. And they're always scalps. It's like, I'm shorting today, or whatever. But I'll be like, I'm short. And people are like nuts. Oh, you're a bull. How can you short it? Like, blah, blah, blah. And I try to explain to them. And then if my short loses, they come, and do their like celebration dance and is spiking the football on me or whatever. And I'm trying to explain to them that I'm actually making money when my short goes wrong, right? I've been shorting the stock market effectively. I shorted it from the top to the bottom. That was great. It was super, they were great trades, but because of the very nature of my portfolio and the way that I approach risk, I still lost a shit ton of money of my net worth during that time. It's bounced back. I'm fine. You know what I mean? I don't think I'll stay fine. I think it's going to go right back down.
Do you get any kind of bit back or any kind of pains or anything like that?
Money does not stress me out. It was either like never trade again or learn to deal with it. You know what I mean? I'm more upset if I lose a fantasy football game than I am if I lose money on a trade. I'm hyper competitive, just not in the market.
I don't know what it was that caused me the pains more because it's not like I've not had bad losses before. I lost a significant amount of my Bitcoin in Mt. Gox, and I didn't feel like I felt over the last couple of years.
Well, the last couple of years, it's because you knew you had had the chance. I think that mentally, I wasn't there in Mt. Gox, so I don't know. But people who lost their money in Mt. Gox, it's not like it was like 20K Bitcoin and then they lost their money. Yes, it was like growing, whatever, but it was still a nascent asset. It was like an idea. When that idea becomes worth $20,000 per asset and you don't sell it and then you start losing later, you're always comparing to like what you could have had. So I think when you have the bar set so high, knowing Bitcoin could be $20,000 a Bitcoin and everything you do after that psychologically, if you had it at the time, you're like, well, I could have just sold it at 20,000. I'd be rich. So I'm a jackass, and I think that probably, I'm not a psychologist and I can't speak to your mental state, but I really think that that's the issue here. It's because now that people have seen the light and seen the top, it went from like a crazy idea to an actually legitimate way that people became wealthy. And if we're not those people, it's hard not to compare to what could have been.
I've been catching a lot of flack on Twitter because I was saying, like, I think Bitcoin's going to go down 50%. And every time it would move down, I know, like, if it goes down 50% again, that's going to be tough. So I started to sell and I sold. And then, like, I start to feel better as I was selling Bitcoin, like, my back pain's going away. So I think it
It's
was,
amazing what profit can solve.
yeah. And it was just that I think I was overexposed. I think I'm completing my journey of going from a complete activist investor that doesn't care about the stock market or the scam or the Ponzi or this, or, all that, to Bitcoin is just a part of my portfolio. And I'm still a Bitcoin maximalist in heart, but I'm a value maximalist, really. Like, I want value for my family and myself. and I wanna help other people get value and create value. So, Bitcoin is the thing that changed my life, but that doesn't mean I have to be enduring 50% portfolio losses because it helped me.
Because of your principles that only you know about or care about, right? Like, it's not like anyone else is seeing your portfolio or understanding how you feel about that. I mean, at the end of the day, this is for me the way to look at it. If you are so married to a certain asset, you should still go make money elsewhere because then you can buy more of the thing you really like, right? So even if you're committed to Bitcoin only being, if you're really a maximalist, let's say it's 25% of your portfolio, let's say it's 50, right? How are you going to get more Bitcoin? Go get some more money, dude. Get a job, invest in some other stuff, and then flip it into Bitcoin. The beauty of having a well balanced portfolio, if it's actually increasing and if you're making more money in life as you get older, or those things, is that if your Bitcoin is 10%, if your net worth rises, that 10% rises and continues to rise. And, it may turn itself into 20%, and then you may choose to rebalance or whatever. But the reality is that to be a Bitcoin maximalist and not be able to afford any Bitcoin is a really hard way to live. At the core is that in everyone's mind, they're wondering if it's ever going back to where it was. And if you aren't sure of that, you'll always feel like you missed your chance to cash out.
Like, back to $1,000, you mean?
I mean, back to 20,000 bucks.
You mean, like, people aren't 100% sure that it's gonna go back up?
Yeah. I mean, once you see it go from, 20 to 3 to 14 to 3, and there's a Wall Street chart that shows you the psychological path of any asset. We all know it, right? Comes back to disbelief and goes again. It follows the chart. Like, this is not unfamiliar ground. This is not unique to Bitcoin or crypto to see an 80% retrace on an asset. These things happen in markets, but it gives you doubt if you're ever going to get that euphoria again.
I think for me, I really do think I'm 100%, or, nothing's 100%. I'm 99% sure Bitcoin's gonna be 100K someday. So I still have a significant amount of my wealth in Bitcoin, but I took enough out and diversified into other asset classes so that I can be wrong about that. So I cannot be one of those people that are like, "It has to go back to 20K. It has to go back to 20K. Otherwise, I could live fine and go get a job," and, like, if Bitcoin dies, right? If Bitcoin goes away, I could make it work because I was able to cash out and diversify and went more into cash, especially before Black Thursday.
And you've already won.
And I'm like an entrepreneur myself. I got into Bitcoin in 2011, but I had a game company. I was making Facebook games and stuff in 2008, 9. I didn't go to college or like university like you. I went to college for like writing. So I didn't get any useful.
My degree was in anthropology, dude. I wanted to be Indiana Jones.
You should message Gabor Lucas. He's a closet anthropologist.
Oh, nice. Closet anthropologist. I guess I'm a closet anthropologist, deep, deep in the closet too. People probably
Send him a PM on Twitter with some of your favorite findings from any digs you've done, and
have done digs, man. I've done a few.
he'll love that. Yeah, so I guess the way I'm, like, lately thinking of things, I subscribe to Real Vision, and, watching their stuff over the last 6 months has been really good. Eric Townsend has a podcast, Macro Voices. I listen to that quite a bit. Started just trying to pay more attention to previous cycles in history and, like, what's likely gonna happen. And I do agree with you that I think the Ponzi is gonna continue in the stock market, and there's only a really small chance that it can fall apart, and that's only if people revolt. And I don't think it's at that situation here in North America where people will pick up torches and pitchforks and revolt because they're getting UBI, like, they're getting money. Even if it's only a small portion and their children are gonna pay for it, they're getting something, so it's keeping people complacent.
What does the world look like if it happens? It's literally a disaster. Bad for everyone. Like, even those poor people who get to say that I was right, like down with the 1%, are going to be even more poor,
Yeah.
and they're going to be hungrier. So, like, it's hard to cheer for that scenario just so that you can be right about Bitcoin or so that, the Ponzi will end or whatever. But I mean, it's not probably going to end. We may see a Great Depression. We may see a huge thing, but it will start again. It will rise again from the ashes if that happens.
I've been thinking that less and less connected with Bitcoin because, like you said, I don't think Bitcoin benefits from a depression. I think Bitcoin, and the reason why I say Bitcoin is correlated is because I feel like I'm defining correlated as the same way that altcoins are correlated in theory,
If
like,
Bitcoin moves, altcoins like indiscriminately get destroyed regardless of what they are. Yes.
because correlated there is, it just means it's related, right? Either of the two things are related so that one directly implies or is complementary to the other, such as a husband and wife.
Right. So if you believe that they're correlated, then the very Bitcoin maximalist theory is bunk. Price movement could be correlated, perhaps you could argue.
The way I used to think when I got into Bitcoin, like 2011 to 2016, even actually 2018, like it wasn't until like midway through 2018 I changed my mind. So for a good 7 years, I thought Bitcoin was the stereotypical sort of maximalist response that you'd hear from anonymous people on Twitter, like, why are you in Bitcoin or whatever? Oh, it's a hedge against inflation. It's a hedge against a collapse. It's alternative to gold for apocalypse times or whatever. Like, and a lot of that stuff is true, but mostly what people think is that the stock market's a scam, central bankers are running a Ponzi, and that's going to fall apart and Bitcoin's going to benefit from that. And I was one of those people for a long time, and I still partially think that, like, if that happens, Bitcoin can decouple and then really become uncorrelated and actually inversely correlated. But since 2017, when I saw this presentation by Harry Dent, he's like an economist guy. We were at this conference, and he gave us a presentation about the macro markets, like the S&P and the stock markets and Bitcoin at the point where do you remember when the stocks were kind of like ready to crash in 2018?
December 18, this was going to be it, the big crash. And that was a major drop, but boy, it recovered fast. I love that drop because I bought Amazon at 1300.
That was the point where Bitcoin was really low as well, and shortly after that Bitcoin started to go up. And that's what made me think, like, maybe Harry's right, because he presented in terms of bubble pops. He presented bubble pops of previous history in the stock markets and other assets. And he charted Bitcoin on the bubble pop, and he charted the stocks. And at the time, like, stocks were low, and he was saying this is not the pop of the bubble. If the bubble popped, it would be way lower. So he thought the S&P was going to go way up, and his theory was that Bitcoin was going to follow. If the S&P went up, then Bitcoin would follow, and that would prove neither of them popped in the bubble, and the bubble was still going. And I kind of followed it with that thesis from then on and started to try to pay more attention to whenever the price of Bitcoin would move. And it made me realize that it was very similar to altcoins in that, yeah, maybe Litecoin is leading Bitcoin by 10% one day, or maybe Dash is up leading Bitcoin, or Ethereum is up before Bitcoin or whatever. But in the macro environment, if Bitcoin is in a bull market, altcoins are following Bitcoin.